Hello all and welcome back to another day here at the Damage Report. Not just any day though, it's a special day for like 9 distinct reasons. Number 7 on that list joins us now. Brett Ehrlich, welcome to the show.
Lucky number 7. You know what? That glass is half full, John. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I have a glass that is more than half full of coffee. That's nice. How are you doing?
I'm over it, to be honest. I'm so over it. I'm so done with every boring ass take, with every nothing ass story.
Hey, let me have my boring ass takes first. First of all, I know you said that. And look, I'm not gonna take it that personally because you seem to be implying that the rundown is not gonna be good. But I know something that they don't know. It's that you haven't looked at it yet. So it's you're not saying it with any knowledge. It's ignorance. We have an awesome rundown.
Yeah, we do have this is a great rundown. I like every story on it, even the ones in which I hate the people in them.
Well, that is hardly new on our program or on many of them. But we were this close to a good news block, and then it just didn't fit in the end. But there is some good news. I'm just gonna throw it out there. Wolves are regaining their the species of wolves are regaining their protected status. That's good. This one goes out to our now former editor Cassie, who used to always send me wolf stories. So that's good. The Biden administration has revealed some of the plans for over the next few years, $5 billion to be spent doing electric vehicle chargers on highways. That seems like way too little money, but that's good. There's good news out there, Brett.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm happy about it. Do you know how many species of wolves there are, John?
7.
3.
Damn.
And I think it's like the gray wolf, the white wolf. So we're doing that. And then the Ethiopian wolf.
Oh, hanging in there.
Like, way to go, Ethiopia. You've got your own wolf.
That's awesome. Yeah, and the white wolf is rarely seen south of the wall these days, but it is out there. Anyway, with that said, not only do we have an overall good rundown, but later on, Brett and I are gonna do the one chore that we are responsible for each week, which is the throwing away of our garbage people of the week. So I'm actually gonna get my little garbage can. And so we've got some garbage people. Brett has got fresh garbage people. I have old stale garbage, but it is gonna be awesome either way because we're gonna have a little debate potentially about it. And about a number of other things. Now, with all that said, Brett, ready to talk about some stuff?
Yes, and don't listen to anything I said about wolves because it's like apparently very hotly contested. It was red and not white or black or whatever I said, but gray. And I just looked at it's like no one knows anything about wolves. There's 100 species, you crazies, and so I take it back.
43 species, close to 40 Live Science, which I go to for all my. Wait, wolf.org, I believe we should probably bring an expert on. Anyway, okay. Oh, an Arctic gray wolf, how cute. Okay, anyway, with that said, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that would be great. And blah, blah, blah. Brett, let's do this. We've got important, serious, depressing, scary stuff to talk about, okay? Okay, world, let's do this. This morning, we woke up to news coming out of the Biden administration that was difficult to understand in terms of the specifics initially. But if you're like me, you greeted the news with a, wait, they can do that? And of course, I'm talking about the announcement that $7 billion that apparently had been deposited by the former Afghani government was being taken by the Biden administration, or effectively like through our government, to then be divvied out to a couple of different groups. All of this is apparently a thing that can happen. But I'm gonna preempt Brett and say they were so worried with whether or not they could.
They didn't stop to think they should.
There you go. That is, I think, sort of the moral implication of this. But let's give you a little bit more information about what's actually going to happen and the case that they make what they're doing. So the administration said that the move was the first step in what will likely be a lengthy legal process to set up a trust fund and transfer the money from the Afghan central bank to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. If transfer of the funds is ultimately cleared by the courts, Half of the funds will be made available to September 11th families pursuing legal claims against the Taliban, and the other half will go to humanitarian assistance for the Afghan people. Now, the Taliban, which now controls Afghanistan, has claimed that money, but they don't have any direct way to actually access it. So it's kind of a thing of, I guess they can say that, but if the US decides, nah, it's ours, then there's nothing the Taliban can do about it. The Fed is saying somebody needs to step in because with the government that deposited it no longer existing, there is no one who clearly has a legal claim to the money. It is possible that there is no one who can make a legal claim to the money. So I guess it just gets to be up to the Biden administration. And I understand that the divvying up of the $7 billion, half going to families of victims of September 11th, half going to the Afghan people, that it's like when a company is responding to some scandal by saying they're giving $10,000 to somebody, like it's an attempt to make you be like, well, maybe this is okay, but that was money that was deposited by the Afghan government. It is, whether you can point specifically to how the money of the Afghan people,
like Sean, how are you gonna give it to them other than the way that they said they're gonna distribute the other half? I love this story. This is the other
half, sure, but what about the other half?
Processing fee. You never bought tickets at Ticketmaster? Half of it's a processing fee. Like you never had a DoorDash? You're paying twice as much just to ensure that the money doesn't go to a local business.
Oh my God. Okay, well look, Brett is doing his thing where he's making light of the news, but look, I understand it. It's the families of September 11th victims, which obviously we have a massive amount of sympathy for. That does not mean though that our compassion for who else could benefit from the money should be short-circuited just because the people who will in theory be getting it, although God only knows when or how much of it would actually go to them, seem sympathetic. Do they deserve money for their experience? Yes, definitely. I would like to raise a question. Why this money?
Because Afghanistan is next to Iraq, which is responsible for 9/11. Idiot.
Okay, that was very, very stupid and also basically sums up like 10 years of our government propaganda.
That's what I'm saying.
Why this money?
Let me just get to the point. I just want to say, like, this is my favorite story. I'm so glad that it's leading off the show because it shows how bonkers the universe is right now. How bonkers post-fact Trumpian economics and politics the world has become. This is a Trump move, dude. Like, and this is a Trump move that resonates with people. Now, here's what's gonna happen. Biden thinks he's won politics today and is spiking his football being like, we're gonna keep the oil, like what Trump said, but we're gonna keep the money from the Afghan government, who was the people who let us down and allowed 9/11 to happen as we figured out through, letting Al-Qaeda operate out of Tora Bora or whatever, okay? So that is the logic at work here. Biden thinks he's gonna win people over, and I think he will. I think there's a lot of people who are like, that is an awesome flex by Biden. A lot of water cooler politics people are gonna be like, what a huge flex. We took that money from the Taliban and we gave it to the victims of 9/11 because of there's the two things close to each other in the word cloud of me barely paying attention for 25 years of politics. Now he's still gonna lose there's still gonna be Republicans, I guarantee you, who come out and say like, why don't you give them to the victims of the families of people, the families of the victims of people who died when we pulled out sloppily from that country?
Yeah, why don't you give it to the families of the people who died from your vaccines? This is, so as you said, this is effectively Trump's take the oil thing. Or at least there doesn't seem to be a lot of space philosophically between those two things. Y'all are bad, you have something, now we do. That is effectively what it is. If Trump had done this exact thing, my gut is to say that Fox would love it, but I'm not 100% sure that they would, because half still theoretically is going to the Afghan people and they would have a problem with that. But they would love taking the money. They will find some way to attack Joe Biden over this. Not the way that we are, which is, how dare you? This is the money of the people of that country. And oh, by the way, they're gonna really need it right now. But they'll find some way to say that he's secretly doing this so that George Soros, China Mao, something, I don't know. but it'll be nonsense. I do want to remind you though, as we just alluded to, the UN warned last month that 23 million Afghan people are in dire need of assistance and has launched a more than $5 billion funding appeal for Afghanistan. UN's World Food Program says that 8.7 million are at risk of starvation. Millions of girls are not enrolled in school, and food prices are rising. Of course, the famine is part of that, but they're certainly going to need money to deal with it. The money that will be given from this, of course, won't come fast enough to have any immediate impact on this issue. But long term, they're going to need money. And I understand, look, sending it to Afghanistan poses certain risks. Obviously, it is a country that is now governed by the Taliban. It's a Taliban that says that it's reformed in some ways. It has hardly been time enough to know how much of any of that is true. That said, they are in charge. They are also in charge as a predictable consequence of our choices. So to just take the money and be like, good luck, that seems wrong in so many different ways.
It doesn't to me. I hear this, I see this story from a strictly political messaging perspective, and I say, what you gonna do? Say we shouldn't give money to the victims of 9/11? That's the one thing, like Jon Stewart identified that as this, this is something that everyone's gonna fight for. And this is vaguely American to do.
Okay, then if Biden were to propose like a new 1% tax on billionaires to be given exclusively to the victims of 9/11, like I'm sure they would find some way. I think there's contextual stuff they will like about this, but
I prefaced everything with this is how bonkers we are right now and how weird and strange. This is the kind of thing where they use the word treasure in like a very serious headline.
They do.
This is the treasure left over from the legacy of the changing of the regime in Afghanistan. Like we're in a weird world, but I think politically it's a win. Politically it's a win to say, yeah, so the Taliban has it now. We don't like them. I'm not gonna trust the Taliban to magnanimously give money to people door to door. That's not gonna happen. The UN, we're giving money and we're gonna distribute it along ways that we think we kind of have confidence it'll get to people the right way, but we can't guarantee it's going anywhere. And public sentiment has gone against interventionism. So why don't we just take half the money and just give it to people who are victims of vaguely that country?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously you don't have to directly give it to the Taliban. I understand that trying to route through NGOs or something would be difficult, and a lot of that money could end up being claimed by the Taliban. But at least in theory, you could do that. You could alternatively, no one would do this. This is in terms of your political communication, you're gonna hate this, but it could sit accruing interest or be invested to then be bequeathed to a future democratic, government of Afghanistan. There's a lot of issues with that too. I'm just saying, like, it wasn't like we got to do something now. I guess 9/11 families. That seems, and again, obviously all the empathy in the world for those families. Let's give them money.
Doesn't sound like it, John. Sounds like you want to take $3.5 billion out of the pockets of 9/11 victims. Welcome to politics.
There are other sources of money that we could, if we really just wanted to give them money, we could have done it in the past couple of decades. We give money to all sorts of things. It wasn't like we're just like, God, we got to find it somewhere in another country. And if we do, then they'll get it. I don't know. Oh my God. Okay, donkey teeth bits. I'm gonna be referencing your comment. Okay, well, look, we're gonna we'll see. I think I agree. I think you are right in that some people in the ostensibly centrist corporate media will love this. I think that those in the right-wing corporate media will probably largely ignore it. And some of the more clever, more brazen ones will find some way to attack it. That's what I'm saying. And with that said, let's go to our first break, because this next block is gonna be a bit of a doozy. We're gonna be talking about Tucker Carlson, the Canadian trucker protests, and the potential Coming to America trucker protest coming up in just a little bit. We'll be back after this. Oh God, I did not want to have to talk about this, but apparently we're gonna. So let's jump into this video.
It's hard to overstate the historical significance of what we're watching right here. The Canadian trucker convoy is the single most successful human rights protest in a generation. If nothing else, it has been a very useful reminder to our entitled ruling class that working class men can be pushed, but only so far. When they push back, it hurts. It turns out that truck drivers are more important to a country's future than, say, diversity consultants or even MSNBC contributors. Who knew?
Okay, so that was Tucker Carlson doing what Tucker Carlson does, which is saying the most intentionally, crazily dishonest, with a side of racist things that you are currently allowed to say on mainstream media, on the corporate news. I want to dive into a couple different elements of this, Brett. First of all, the claim that he does not believe, but will say anyway, that it is the most successful human rights protest in a generation seems a bit crazy, maybe. What do you think?
He is starving children. This is starving children out. This is making life in America more expensive. These are the populist arguing points that you need to be making, Tucker. I love that he starts out by saying, like, it is hard to overstate how awesome this is. But I'm Tucker Carlson, so I'm gonna try. That's literally my job. And then, as if what I said wasn't insane enough, the next thing I'm gonna do in the same introductory paragraph is to say that it is I, Tucker Carlson, Swanson broth heir, who understands the working men and women of America better than anybody else, who put their, do you know who would never, a guy who talks about dinner parties as much as Tucker Carlson as the barometer for how much ignominy you face in the face of high society. He talks about that on his show, trying to get people to like him. There is no way in hell that guy would be caught dead near a trucker. He would move on. He would bypass, even if he had to pee, a truck stop, so he could go someplace fancy and someplace where like he probably brings his own like toilet paper covers or toilet seat covers. He's a nightmare. There is no way anyone should buy jack squat of what he's selling.
Exactly. Yeah, he's definitely got like one of those like 20 packs of like luxury calf skin toilet seat covers, like in his trunk, just in case. Because he is an incredibly wealthy person who is just desperate to cosplay caring about the working class. And for the most part, months and months and months will go by without there really being a way that he can pretend to do that. But this is perfect. And it's not just for Tucker Carlson. The entire right, which viciously despises the working class, does not want them to have 1 ounce of political power, organizing power, has no interest in their conditions of life ever improving, them ever making any more money. They don't care about that at all, but they know how bad that looks. That's why they distract you from it so much. 99% of their programming is designed to fundamentally obfuscate that fact, that they don't want your life to improve if it would cost them anything, and they believe it's a zero-sum game, thus their coverage. But they do occasionally like to cosplay, and you can actually get in on it. In addition to him pretending to care about these truckers or truckers in general, he's actually selling shirts. I heart truckers. You get it? It's like Tucker, but truckers, because basically the same thing. It's the Swanson broth heir or a trucker. It's the same thing. Now, really fast, I want to dive into a couple other things he said there. So one is they are more valuable than diversity consultants or MSNBC contributors. First of all, he's an MSNBC contributor. It's the same thing. You go and say your talking points at MSNBC, he does it for an hour on his show. In terms of the overall positive impact it has on society, it is at best neutral between those two positions. So he loves to, there's nothing the right-wing elites love more than to pretend to be against the very thing that they are. Again, cosplay. The other thing is the diversity consultants. Here's the thing. Like, can there be money spent in these sorts of efforts that don't benefit people? Definitely. I think most corporations would prefer it to work out that way. But in theory, what are people who are advocating for more consideration of diversity in a variety of workplaces actually trying to do? Benefit the working class, the portion of the working class that he has even less interest in, which is non-white working class individuals. He's cool with the truckers. He doesn't give a damn about other working class people. Now, he also says, and I apologize, Brett, I'm gonna let you get back in there. This is a reminder to the elites that you can push them, but only so far. how many different ways has the working class been pushed in our lifetime, in particular in the past couple of years? What counts as a push to Tucker Carlson? If your wages stagnate for literally years, if you have no leave, all of these things, is that pushing? Is that like losing your job in a pandemic? Is that pushing? Being evicted or having your house foreclosed upon during a pandemic, is that pushing? No, the only thing that counts as pushing is a vaccine mandate that 90% of Canadian truckers support, and fighting against lockdowns that largely don't exist. Those count as pushing and nothing else. Again, this is the most shallow attempt to artificially gin up a new Tea Party that we've seen since the original.
I mean, there's always been this unholy, and I mean that quite literally, alliance between elites in right-wing circles, like the folks who are only in it for the financial conservatism, and then and their alliance with, and it might not just be right-wingers, but a lie that they tell, the cosplay they do so they can build out their voting block, because by definition, elites are never gonna be able to get the majority. And that's it. And that's what's so frustrating about it. These guys, the point of being Tucker Carlson and the point of being most folks in conservative media circles is to act like an a-hole. Is just to be an a-hole, is to be the bully from the 80s movies. And just like the bully in the 80s movie, and any bully anywhere else in the world, is they don't need to be right. They just need enough people to agree with them being mean. Never does the bully have the moral high ground. Never is the bully actually right about this person being terrible. The bully just needs to have more people around agreeing and mocking someone who doesn't have it so great. And that's exactly what Tucker does, is he goes and he tries to pretend that he's on the side of the working class. He's not right. None of his logic is right. I personally don't care if truckers are vaccinated or not. They're in a box by themselves. But they are doing things that are making they don't need to ruin all of Ottawa by not stopping the honking. They don't need to clog up the global supply chain. That's it. They don't need to do that. And they're actually making the world tangibly worse in their efforts.
And that's a great transition point, because some people are happy about that. And we're gonna turn to that now. What do the supposed supporters of the trucker protest actually support? What do they think is acceptable, moral, admirable, and what is not? Well, as with everything else when you're talking about the right wing, it is entirely contingent on circumstances. It does not reference core values or anything like that. And I'll demonstrate it actually. So here's a little bit more video of Tucker Carlson talking about the effects of the protest so far.
So far, that blockade has forced the Ford Motor Company to shut down one of its manufacturing plants and to operate another plant with a skeleton crew. Toyota says it won't be able to manufacture vehicles in Ontario for the rest of the week. General Motors has canceled multiple shifts at its plant in Lansing, Michigan, due to part shortages. So this protest is less than a week old, and already it is causing deep pain to at least one global industry.
Okay, and he presumably thinks that's good. That's why he's so giddy right there. Okay, so in general then, do you support protests that are inconvenient, that have knock-on economic effects? When you occupy a city, did they like that when the autonomous zone was set up in the Pacific Northwest? What about Occupy Wall Street? Again, do you in general support people protesting, or is it just if you love it? If you love it. So he wants to pretend that he's supporting the working class. Okay, well, tens of thousands of workers work at those companies that you were just giddily saying are having their stuff grind to a halt. We're in the middle of, remember, shortages on products, including new cars, by the way. They love to complain about that. So this is gonna lead to more expensive cars, delays in getting them. So again, you can't just throw out a point like that, contradicting so much of what you've said without addressing it. Last year, you guys were horny to pass laws making it legal to run down protesters blocking streets. Should I head to Ottawa? Should I head up there and is it a good thing or not a good thing? Again, I would just love them to actually state a principle ever. There's always principles there lurking in the background, They want money, they have it. They just want to obfuscate, distract, keep control. That's what they have. That's why they talk about things like this. But other than that, what principles are they actually describing, Brett?
They're against law. I'll tell you what principle Tucker seems to stand for, and I'm just taking my cues from him. Tucker is against law and order. He is against the laws that govern the road. He is against peace and quiet and decent society. There is nothing crappier than honking your horn incessantly, unless it's the other thing he mentioned, which is Tucker Carlson, man of the people, is happy that we are kneecapping the American auto industry. Yep. The thing that created the middle class in the world, whether it's through literally making automobiles or the assembly line, things that created the concept of good paying union jobs. He does not care about pay. This guy, the thing that most labor movement and labor action, collective action by a certain class, a certain working class group it goes for is like better working conditions. And by that, they mean don't die. This anti-vax movement is like, yeah, more likely to die. So it doesn't really apply. And then better wages, better benefits. None of that is here. He doesn't care. So again, to answer your question, all he is for is hobbling the American auto industry, and through it, by championing the Canadian worker. I thought he loved this country. He is choosing Canadian workers who drive trucks, probably on the wrong side of the road. I don't know. They're still in the Commonwealth, over American assembly line workers. Some red, white, and blue.
Yeah, this is very consistent, as they've always said. America second after Canada. We prefer Canada, honestly. Again, and by the way, like, maybe we disagree on some of this. I don't think that inconveniencing people during your protest is the worst thing. I don't think that hobbling the American auto industry for a few weeks due to like a strike would be the worst thing. It all depends on for what. We get to evaluate if it was worth it. If I like go and block Culver Boulevard for a solid 2 weeks because I demand that they make another season of Dark Crystal, okay, that's probably not a good call. But if like Culver City government workers who'd been abused for years did it, so that like there are reasons for this. He is totally doing this to try to generate a domestic version of this. It is beneficial to them to talk about the Canadian one because that fills up the news and that's what they need. But that is not what this is about. This is the trucker protest they want here, which by the way is coming, including very nearby, supposedly this weekend in Inglewood and in California. That's what they want. Again, for what? To stop the vaccine mandate? What vaccine mandate? To stop the lockdown? What lockdown? What exactly would you be protesting against? God only knows. God only knows. But if they did come up with things, if it was like the conservatives who, remember, have economic anxiety and have been forgotten by coastal elites, if they actually did it for their quality of life, demanding affordable health care, demanding family leave, higher wages, or like whatever, poof, the right-wing coverage would be entirely gone. It would be a George Soros, Antifa infiltrated thing. They'd have no interest. It is only going to be covered and supported as it has been. They have been bringing on these organizers of the American version that's coming over and over and over again, so long as it is loud and vague. If they make any specific demands that would improve the quality of life of actual American workers, it's over, it's done. They're not gonna have any interest in it.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And this is the most perfect like protest for Fox News right now. It gives them a chance to repeat the BS talking point that they're for the people, which they're not. And it has that specific spice of right-wing insanity where it like doesn't make sense. Like it's not accurate. And because it's not accurate, because of all the holes in the argument that John and I have pointed out along the way, it's triggering to me. Like it like makes me wildly angry because it's so inane. It doesn't make sense. It's very obviously, as John says, cosplay and this attempt to scoop up a larger voting bloc.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so perfect for them right now.
You're totally right. It's not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to be emotional.
They're going to tow him.
They need it always. They definitely need it during an election year. It is just going to be vague. Like one person is going to yell about immigrants coming over the border. Another person hanging out of a truck is going to say something like about like Satanists, and then the camera is going to cut away. It's going to be a toxic mix of anti-CRT, QAnon, whatever. The same conspiracy casserole that they've been banding about for years now. It just is also going to burn a lot of fuel and make a lot of noise. That's all it's going to be. Okay, let's jump to a little update. Closing out the week with some updated information. Not long ago, Texas decided to set off this new wave of bounty-based legislation by effectively outlawing abortion in the vast majority of cases. And we now know what effect that's happening. Apparently, abortions in Texas fell by 60% in the first month out of the most restrictive abortion law currently in the US for like half a century effectively. You can see here those numbers. So you can see that on average, something like 4,500 to 5,500 abortions were being had per month. That dropped down to a little bit over 2,000, actually about 2,200 being reported in September. And so I know many conservatives will be watching this and thinking, yes, we did it. Those damn women can't exercise their rights anymore, so we stopped the abortions. No, not really, not really. They didn't happen in Texas, and some, I'm sure, didn't happen. For people who didn't have the resources, as we'll get into, it didn't happen. The abortions happened though, they did, just not there. So if you talk to neighboring states, foundations that still provide those services, you find out things like this. Trust Women Foundation, which is clinics in Oklahoma City and Wichita, Kansas, has seen an increase in the number of women coming in. Co-executive director of it said that since its Oklahoma City clinic has filled up with patients from Texas, its Wichita clinic is now seeing more Oklahomans. So I guess we're just bumping state by state people further and further away. Shanta James Boyd said, our clinic director just stated that the majority of patients are coming from Texas. So that means that patients that are needing services in Oklahoma have nowhere to go. Comms director said their Oklahoma City clinic normally would see 15 to 20 women from Texas a week. That's now up to 60. Planned Parenthood of the Great Plains says that they've seen an increase. And you see this in the Planned Parenthood Rocky Mountains, it's gone up. And so the abortions are still happening. People are just having to drive farther or fly to get them done.
This is a where do you start story. You can start at the statistics where, as you said, the abortions are still happening. People are still they're going out of state to make this happen. And this is the result of so many horrible decisions by individual voters, by the Supreme Court. But I think the place where it always comes back to for me is the idea, like the framework of this legislation, which is bonkers. This new fad law framework of allowing people who are not involved in this whatsoever to become freaking Karens and just call and tattle on people who are making the hardest decision of their life or the easiest decision of their life or a middle of the road decision in their life, but definitely a decision in their lives. And in this crazy way, there is precedent, there is Roe versus Wade. It is enshrined in legislative precedent, in judicial precedent. But they came up with this insane way so you could sue for damages as a result of something you were not remotely involved in is so outside how law works that it itself is insane. But more insane is the fact that the Supreme Court's like, well, until we decide on whether it's okay to essentially like do the craziest thing ever in the history of American politics, we're just gonna let it go. We're gonna let it go.
Yeah. And they're doing that because out of respect for the new novel mechanism of law, not because they like the effects they think will come from it. Yeah, you're totally right. What they have done on both sides of this is through their policies for decades and decades, they have driven people to the limit, squeezed them economically, and now they are reaping the consequences of the desperation that people feel. And it happens on both sides of this issue in this particular topic and in all of the other like $10,000 bounty laws that we're seeing spread from state to state. And it's always $10,000. Do you notice that? It's almost like they focus grouped and figured out that that's exactly enough money to incentivize this sort of behavior. So if you're one of the women who wants to exercise your rights, you can still do it. You just have to drive a long way and possibly stay somewhere. So it's gonna be much more expensive. So apparently the average cost nationally for an abortion is $550, but then you have to add travel, hotel, food costs, potentially hundreds of dollars more. So if you are wealthy, then this law barely matters. You can fly and get it done, come back to take a little bit of time off. But if you can't get the time off your job, if you don't have the money in your savings, then you don't have rights anymore. And the rights that you have access to are entirely based on how much money you have. So if you have enough money, you can still do it, and many still are. If you don't, that's it, you don't have the rights anymore. And then on the other side of the economic desperation, we're no longer even pretending that, as Brett said, that law should be based in something moral, something foundational. It's just, hey, we're gonna incentivize you. You're desperate, you don't have any money. We're gonna give you a lot of money if you just look around and watch for anyone doing something that we don't like. We are creating a bounty system of legal tattletales, effectively. That's what they're doing. And in Texas, it's for abortion, but it's for so many other things. More and more right-wing states are rolling this out.
Horrible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't feel better just because, like we said the last time we talked about this, sort of to show the irony, some blue states will come up with it like a version of this for guns or something. This is not how laws are supposed to work, whether they accomplish the ends we want or the ones insane right-wingers want.
This is like if someone robbed a store in another town and you sue the person who robbed the store and so that you can get money from it. And not as like a reward from it's not like you get a portion of the recovered money. It's just you get paid for it, for reporting it.
Well, everything else has been privatized. Why not? Why not this?
It's insane.
And eventually it's not just gonna be reporting. Eventually it's going to be hauling in. Capture them, haul them in. If you believe that they've done something wrong, we'll pay you for that.
Which is like a Second Amendment wet dream to keep it in like the sexualization of it. It's just, it is what they long for. It's these bored crusaders. It's these bored
crusaders.
There's so much to fight for. There's so many worthy causes for you to fight for, but they might be a little complicated. You might have to find something out. You take such heart in knowing that this is so super simple and you've just decided you're gonna fight for 8 cells. Fight for something else. Why don't you fight for the rights of that woman to make her own damn decision? And as you're saying, don't tread on me or whatever the hell your creed is. There's so much better to fight for than this.
I agree. I mostly picked this upcoming story because I have a feeling Brett is gonna be interested in it. With that said, let's see.
Hey everyone, Congresswoman Nancy Mace here. I'm in front of Trump Tower today. And I remember in 2015 when President Trump announced his run. I was one of his earliest supporters. I actually worked for the campaign in 2016. I worked in 7 different states across the country to help get him elected.
I endorsed him early. I worked all over, worked my butt off to get him elected, and he just endorsed my primary opponent. Oops. Yes, Donald Trump endorsed Katie Arrington, who is challenging Nancy Mace, who is a first-term congresswoman for South Carolina's 1st district. And as a result of that, I don't know, you can interpret it as a betrayal if you want. She decided to go to Trump Tower to upload a video. But let's be clear about this. She didn't go there to meet with Donald Trump. presumably he's not there. She actually traveled hundreds and hundreds of miles in the opposite direction of Trump from South Carolina to go to a place that had his name on it for some reason. And overall, I just want to acknowledge what I feel is the very Michael Scott visits New York City vibe of the video that she's uploading. Maybe she'll see a celebrity. But anyway, Brett, before we jump into this, she makes the case for why that endorsement by Donald Trump of her opponent should not cause voters to give her the boot. Let's take a look at this.
I supported him again in 2020 because of policies I believed in. He brought American jobs back. He lowered our taxes, wages, and employment were better for every hardworking American in our country. He made America safer, and he took on China directly. And America was stronger all around the world. And quite frankly, freedom and democracy was stronger all around the world. If you want to lose this seat once again in midterm election cycle to Democrats, then my opponent is more than qualified to do just that.
So Brett, what do you think about this? Do you think this will win them over? Could it win Trump over? She's camped outside of his house with a boombox.
This is such a stupid argument. Yeah, exactly. He's like, in your eyes, like going full Cusack, say anything. This is fantastic to me. I love every bit of it. I will say this, like her two arguments are one, he's just mad right now. Like he's just mad, he's in a mood, you know how he gets, but I'm here, I'm sticking with him, even though he's mad at me, just know I still love him. And the second part of her argument that is so batty to me is she's basically saying Trump, every decision Trump has ever made is brilliant, except not to endorse me. Like this is the one time in my eyes, I mean, and January 6th, but that's the one time in my eyes that Donald Trump went on the wrong side. I just think it's so precious and so pathetic. I will say, if she's in New York, she's probably not going there explicitly to stand outside Trump Tower. People who go to New York and LA, if they have no other business being there, are raising money and appearing on television shows. And I guarantee you, those are the two things she's doing.
That is probably true. I wonder what shows. If she gets brought into Fox, I feel like they're gonna raise some potentially embarrassing questions about that. Anyway, Katie Arrington responded to the video being uploaded saying, Nancy, did you get lost on your way to the Fox News studio? Which apparently is, we've concluded that's what actually happened. Or are you in New York City to fundraise with the progressives? What does New York City have to do with the low country? Well, first of all, like, okay, yeah, point out that she went to a blue area to raise money. And then also point out that all of the other Republicans do it too, including Donald Trump. Donald Trump literally comes to LA to go to areas where wealthy Republicans are in a blue area to raise money. Like, again, this is hardly just a Nancy Mace thing. But anyway, to her argument, she's laying out like all of her qualifications. I agreed with him on this, I agreed with him on that. I worked for him, I supported him early. But if the thing is that he doesn't endorse you, apparently none of that was enough. So reiterating it feels a little bit weird. At the end of the day though, it's not even about that. It's not about who supported him longer or who like flattered him more over standing up to China. It might be as simple as something Katie Arrington said recently. Asked about the 2020 election, she said, yes, I do. I think Trump won the 2020 election. I think there's too many voting irregularities. But is President Biden, duly elected? Yeah, he's legally the president of the United States because people like Nancy Mace didn't have a backbone and they certified the election. Yeah, Nancy Mace should have just blocked the House from doing that. She, in the minority, should have blocked the House. No, she supports the election lie, and Nancy Mace hasn't been 100% supportive of Trump and his lies about the election. It might be as simple as that, Brett.
Yeah, this is how fascism is. They want the politically expedient thing to do is to support the autocrat, because of course it is. But the thing that blows my mind is he lost. Like he's a loser. He lost the election, and yes, they're doing the thing that I guess is their only hope is to just say no, he didn't. He didn't lose. Because the worst thing that you can call Trump is a loser And I can't believe that him being a loser hasn't gotten through to people when the only victories he's had is to defeat the most widely disliked political candidate in a very long time, Hillary Clinton, and declare bankruptcies billions of times. Yeah. He is a loser. They refuse to say it. If they need to huddle beneath the in between the legs and grab the leg of their daddy like this, and he's a loser, what does that make them? There are no alpha dogs in the Republican Party. No. They are all followers and grifters. And the worst part is they worship the biggest snowflake of all time, someone who won't stop complaining about how unfair everybody is to him.
100%. Let's jump into one more story with what remains of our hour, sort of our favorite topic these days. Senator Tommy Tuberville, who has, in the latest accounting, violated stock trading rules, the few stock trading rules that actually apply to elected officials, 132 times in a 1-year period, has now come out against the idea of limiting stock trading by elected officials. So this is the big political surprise of the week. He said the idea to ban them from trading stocks is ridiculous, going on to say they might as well start sending robots up here. You can't do anything. I think it would really cut back on the amount of people that would want to come up here and serve. I really do. We don't need that. That is, if you take that quote seriously, Brett, how damning is that? That if you can't trade individual stocks with the information you get as an elected official, and you're limited to just mutual funds, well, then nobody's gonna wanna come here. That is so damning.
So it needs
also true.
It needs to be said that Tommy Tuberville is stupid.
It does.
You have to say it, because recently he said that his father fought socialists in Europe to liberate France. Like, no, it was the fascists. That's the side you're on. This guy only has the job because Jeff Sessions. That's it. That is how he became a senator, and name recognition and being actively terrible. But in terms of this guy's argument is that we have to send robots because who wouldn't be corrupt? Who wouldn't be corrupted? I mean, it's there. This is low-hanging fruit. Like, dude, I've actively advocated for changing the way we compensate representatives, and that they should be like salespeople. They should be put on a very small base salary with a huge bonus if America, i.e. the company they work for, does well. And why is there no bonus structure? Actually do something with your job. We only hire you because you're the only name we know every time. You've convinced us that it's actually the institution that's messed up, but our representative represents us and fights valiantly. And money is such an obstacle to getting into that race. So I think they should be put on a bonus structure, period, end of story.
I think that's an interesting idea. Obviously, how much could you learn about people in terms of how they would define how you evaluate if America's doing well? The joke at the end of the day, though, is on us, Brett, because the system you describe is very much already in effect. They are, from their point of view, paid a low base salary. $174,000 to them is nothing. And they are paid a bonus if a certain part of America does well. That bonus isn't immediate. It comes in the form of jobs. It comes in the form of speaking tours and fake book purchases and all of that. If the very wealthy do well, they do reward you. You get a bonus for that. Just maybe we could reevaluate the system and make it a little bit more broad-based evaluation of how we're all doing.
Tommy Tuberville.
Anyway,
$1 million, making millions being a football coach, making $170,000 a year is not enough for him.
No, it's not. It's not. In any event, that is unfortunately all the time we have. If you're on our linear platforms, thank you for watching. If you're on Twitch, YouTube, or the members app, there's a lot more coming. We're gonna take a couple-minute break, but don't go anywhere because we'll be right back after this.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.